What is going on? Thank you for tuning in to the MMA Podcast, the 144th edition, as we break it down this October 29th. Not the busiest week in MMA, but we're still going to bring it. We had UFC Dublin this past Saturday, headlined by Patty Houlihan and Louis Smolka. Also, a few fight announcements to talk about at UFC 195 this coming January 2nd card. A few other bits. Nick Diaz, it looks like he might be fighting as early as next year. Vitor Belfort no showing the MMA Hour. Tim Kennedy wants the winner of Hendo Belfort. And a few others. Let's do it. Thanks for tuning in. We are live.
We did it for the love of the game. I did it for. The game will never be the same. I did it for.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
Thank you, Lenny. It is the MMA Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. It is myself, and I'm joined by none other than P Money. It's Pat on the other line. He's on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. Pat, what's going on, bro?
Jake, we're just big pimping, enjoying a lovely week out here. It's been a good one. We had a little UFC action this past weekend. Have a little bit of fight action to talk about. Looking forward to breaking it down as always for TMP 144.
TMP 144 doesn't rhyme like TMP 143, but I apologize. Big shout out of course to all of the listeners. If you are listening live, the phone number, as always, it's 213-457-3380. Taking calls. We're on Skype at the MMA Podcast, or you can tweet us at the MMA Podcast. We'll read your tweets live on the air. Big shout out to the homie Ramses on Twitter at the Aunt Jimmy Show. But if you are listening, you probably already follow him. Probably co-hosted probably 100 episodes, and he will be back in a short matter of time. But currently he's laid up doing rehab. He just got his hip replaced, and he's relative to getting a new hip, he's very young. He's like 30, so just got I think in a car wreck or something, and a while back, and finally it nagged enough to where he needed to fix it. So shout out to our boy Ramses, laid up. I hope you feel better soon, selfishly, because I enjoy when you're able to join me and old Pat here. God
bless him, Jake.
God bless him, and God bless you, Pat. I guess without any further ado, we'll get into UFC Dublin. I don't know if there's that much to say about it. Last week we talked about we did our show late last week, late enough to where we could cover Joe Duffy pulling out of the fight last minute due to a concussion he incurred a few days prior. So unfortunately, we weren't able to see Dustin Poirier and Joseph Duffy. We also weren't able to see Stipe Miocic and Ben Rothwell. Miocic pulling out of the fight on October 14th, citing an injury, and Rothwell, like Poirier, apparently not wanting to take a fight on short notice. So what we got was one of the most shallow cards in recent memory. You had Darren Elkins was one of the only ranked guys, which when you're only able to have 2 or 3 people on the entire card who are ranked, I mean, we have 10 weight classes and the rankings go down to 15. So that's 150 fighters. That's a lot of people. And if you have a card where you're only able to get like 2 ranked fighters and no one in the top 10, none of the top 100 fighters in the UFC, that's just not going to do well. The crowd brought it, which was good. For such a shallow card. I mean, you really can't blame the crowd for bringing it. You can blame them for acting like absolute shitheads, throwing trash and beer at the ring when the home country guy Patty Houlihan lost via second round submission, including I think a bottle that like hit someone in the front row and cracked him open bad. There were pictures, and dude had blood, more blood coming from his head than anyone on the entire card. Weren't too many crazy upsets on the card itself. Elkins won, Daly won, Siri won. Norman Park was a big favorite over Reza Madadi in a somewhat boring fight like Dustin Poirier, which our friend Hunter at Hero Shinwoo, he corrected me because I guess I'm saying it wrong. I keep saying Poirier, mainly because I have a buddy I grew up with who had a last name spelled the exact same as Dustin, and he preferred to be called Poirier, not Poirier, but Poirier. So I read it and I just think of my buddy and read it like that. But according to Hunter, I think he said it's pronounced Poirier. So Poirier. I hope I'm saying it right. If I'm still fucking it up, I apologize. I'm not from fucking Louisiana where you bastards speak Cajun, French, all that shit. Pat, what did you think of UFC Dublin before I go on a tangent against people from Louisiana?
No, let's not go down that road. I do believe I've heard her most commonly referred to as Poirier, so we can roll with that pronunciation. Fair enough. As far as the UFC Dublin card goes, you're completely right. As when it comes to, there was not really any ranked talent. This is one of those cards where you look at it on paper and you say, okay, there's really no big names. There's no super huge fights you want to turn up to see specifically. It's a fight pass card. And you just kind of hope that there's some exciting action along the way, that maybe, these people, they're not ranked, so they're trying to make their name. They're trying to put on a good performance, and maybe we see some good finishes. There wasn't too much of that. There was some good action. The prelims, not so much. I mean, one of the things that really stood out to me, right off the bat, was the Gareth McClellan versus Bubba Bush fight. In the second round, Gareth McClellan Bubba Bush was going to try and take down or work a trip on Gareth McClellan, and McClellan grabs the cage and ends up basically falling in a mount. And it obviously, whether or not Bubba Bush would have gotten the takedown is one thing, but would Gareth McClellan have been able to secure the mount without grabbing the cage? It really doesn't look like it. And it really seemed to have affected the position of the fight. And instantly, as I was watching this, I was thinking the ref needs to stop this fight and, restart it on the feet or something like that. And the ref just lets it ride out. So I'm like, okay, great. This is, the kind of referee we have. Then I felt it kind of set the tone for the card. It's kind of just a B-level show. Wasn't anything to write home about. There did end up being a couple decent matches there. I liked watching Tom Breeze completely light up Cathal Pendred, or I think it's Cahal, I believe. Cahal, if we're being super politically
lit him
correct
up with
now.
some straight lefts.
My goodness, those were laser beams right there. And yeah, I don't know if we're really getting into the main card, but there was some decent action with the main card. I like seeing Nicholas Dalby versus Darren Till. Now, I thought that was a good fight. Darren Till was looking real good, like a super prospect there. Had some really clean Muay Thai attack. And Nicholas Dalby decided to come out and fight for the third round and was able to get inside and work his little magic there. And he was putting a hurting on Darren Till, and I was rooting for Dalby at the end of that third round. I love seeing a good comeback story. as long as it's a good, clean, legit comeback, of course. You don't want to see somebody land a dirty shot or something like that, come back and win the fight or whatever the case may be. But no, he, pure heart, pure grit, came back and just damn near got the finish on Till, put a good stomping onto him, um, and was able to use a good, I'd say it was kind of a karate style attack there. Um, One fight that as the fight ended, I said I hope this fight goes to a draw. I felt it pretty much was deserving to be a draw, and I was really shocked when two of the three judges actually agreed with me and scored a 28-28. So I did find that pleasing. But yeah, everything else pretty much just went as planned. Louis Smolka absolutely smoked Patty Houlihan there. Laid a pretty good beating on him. If I were the hometown crowd,
He smoked him.
he smoked him. Oh my goodness. Let's patent that. Um, yeah, it was an okay card. I mean, there was a couple good fights there, but yeah, nothing that crazy at all. It was
Nothing to
actually,
write
I don't know.
home
It
to
was
mama about.
no, it was definitely subpar at best.
Yeah.
Fight pass worthy indeed.
Fight pass worthy, indeed. Let's move on. I guess that does it for last weekend. We had a Bellator card, but we actually were able. Our podcast last week was so late on Friday that we were able to discuss the results of the Bellator card. Brandon Halsey getting upset there in the main event. So that covers last weekend's MMA. So let's get to the news from this week. Just doesn't feel right until I've heard that news theme to properly break down the news. One bit of news: Tim Kennedy saying he wants the winner of Dan Henderson and Vitor Belfort. Usually when someone calls out another fighter, I feel like it's kind of dumb. If you do it right, then that's one thing. But I see fighters like just calling out people that either A are so far ahead of them that they make no sense as a fight, like a unranked fighter calling out the number 2 guy in the weight class, or it's someone just looking for an easy fight. This one I like a lot. Kennedy's smart calling out the winner of Hendo versus Belfort, because the winner of that fight, it'll probably be a finish. So the winner of that fight will probably be riding out of that fight with a lot of momentum for finishing a legend. Both guys are legends. Whoever gets the win, whether it's Vitor or Hendo, is going to have a lot of steam behind him afterwards. And Kennedy will likely murder whoever wins that fight. So I think this is smart, and I would like to see it too. Kennedy, I don't think he's fought either guy. Has he? I don't think he's fought.
No,
Yeah.
Kennedy.
He's fought a lot of guys who have been on steroids, but not Belfort. So yeah, let's see Kennedy versus. I think Hendo. I guess we'll officially break down the card next week because it does take place November 7th. So we will be breaking down the card next week, and Hendo Belfort is the main event of that card. But I'm leaning Hendo now. I think whoever wins is going to win it in a finish. But I think this is a smart move. What do you think about Kennedy versus the winner? And do you agree with me that whoever wins the fight between Hendo and Belfort, if they do fight Kennedy next, they're going to get their ass smashed?
Wow, those are all very debatable points. I'm not quite sure. First of all, I would like to see Tim Kennedy fight Yoel Romero again. I know at this point, though, in the divisional rankings, Yoel Romero, he's right where he needs to be, facing Jacare Souza. That fight needs to happen. And the winner of that fight is absolutely going to get the title match. Now, if Souza defeats Yoel Romero, I would like to see them run that fight back just because Yoel Romero was completely dominating that fight from start to finish. People complain about Stoolgate and how the fight should have been called. Um, Tim Kennedy was mounting no offense in that fight. He was getting completely handled, and the one time he landed any offense was that flurry right before the bell when he grabbed the inside of Yoel Romero's gloves to hold him inside his distance and land at least one, I believe maybe two uppercuts, which was what rocked him initially and started that flurry, and was the only point that he mounted any kind of significant offense in that fight was based on his illegal glove grabbing. And then he wants to go on and complain, as well as a ton of fucking fans that don't remember or didn't even witness how things actually went down, which was his illegal actions caused Romero to get rocked in the first place. And then he complains about him taking extra time to recover from the blows that shouldn't even have counted. I mean, it could have been waived at that point. But everybody wants to complain about Stoolgate when the fact that Tim Kennedy cheated gets completely forgotten about. So I'd like to see them run that back and just see Romero put another fucking stomping on Kennedy again. I mean, the guy's a hero, he's a sergeant first class, but I don't like that aspect of things. I would like to see that Romero and Kennedy fight go down again and see how that really plays out. But
Nuclear hot take.
I mean, I'm saying, son. But if we're gonna be real about it, though, him versus Kennedy, or him versus Belfort or Henderson, the winner of that fight, that's where he's relevant right now. And I actually think that either one of them could smoke Kennedy. Kennedy. He doesn't have super striking, and his grappling. He's a blanket. He's basically another 185-pound John Fitch or Jake Shields or Yushin Okami. That's where I view him and his skill set in mixed martial arts. And I think Vitor Belfort and Dan Henderson, those are his best shots of beating somebody with status at this point. And that's somebody with old shine who's on their way out. As much as I hate to say it about Vitor Belfort and Dan Anderson, I wish that they could both go on these good title runs or whatever it may be, but I think it's pretty safe to say that at this point in the game, that's well beyond them. But this is Tim Kennedy's only shot to get a big win like that on his career. And I'm still not sure that would happen. I think Hendo could probably touch him up and maybe teach him a thing or two in wrestling. And Vitor Belfort, we've seen what he's able to do. Actually, I think Kennedy may be able to handle Belfort just by the fact that he could probably out wrestle the non-TRT Vitor and just make him gas out by the second round or something like that. Probably get an RNC. So, I may actually put a couple bucks on Kennedy versus Belfort if that fight were to go down. But, yeah, I think Vitor or Henderson both have a chance of knocking him out. I think Henderson would probably have a better chance of winning that fight, though.
Yeah, we're both sort of leaning, I guess it sounds like, toward Hendo in next week's fight. But yeah, I think Tim, his wrestling has never looked deficient against anyone he's really fought. I mean, he kept up with Yoel. He dominated Bisping. Rockhold really outstruck him, and I thought he beat Jacare when they fought back at Strikeforce Houston over 5 years ago. But to sort of stay on that same jag of the Hendo Belfort fight, Vitor Belfort apparently pulls out of the MMA Hour last minute. Ariel Helwani posted or I guess read a text back and forth between himself and Vitor Belfort's wife, who is his handler. And Vitor Belfort's wife is like, you're not going to talk about steroids or the article that was just written about him by Josh Gross. And Ariel's like, well, I feel like that would be kind of disingenuous to my listeners if I don't ask, because that's kind of the obvious question mark going on. That article we've talked about a bunch on the show, which you haven't, if you haven't read it yet, just Google Josh Gross, Vitor Belfort, UFC, possible cover up there with a failed test that the UFC may have known about and didn't disclose to his opponent, John Jones. So this article's released, and Vitor Belfort's wife says, no, you're not going to ask him about it. Ariel says, well, yeah, I'm going to ask him about it. And they pull out last second. Belfort is just so unlikable with all this stuff going on. I mean, refusing to come on shows because you lied about something, and, being a former drug abuser. I don't know if you really can call it that when a lot of his opponents were also on the gimmick. But I don't know, just Vitor, just 5 years ago, he was so likable. And I don't know anyone, like, around when he fought Anderson, no one hated Vitor, but now he is pretty much universally hated, and for seemingly good reason. And I think now that he's off the gimmick, I don't know. I think Dan is going to smash him, frankly, but not to spoil next week's UFC breakdown. But yeah, what do you make out of all of this this Vitor nonsense?
The Vitor nonsense, really, and that specific issue that Ariel Helwani was trying to question him about, the Gross article, that's a really potentially damning case for the UFC. I think, if anything, Vitor, he's keeping his yap shut just for the fact that if he spills the beans or talks about that, that puts the UFC into some serious shit, into some more federal investigations, or who knows what could possibly be going on with that. The shit would definitely hit the fan if anything like that comes about. And really, it seems like there's just so much scandalous shit just left and right going on with the UFC. It's really amazing that there isn't, I'm sure there is probably some sort of federal investigation on some sort of level going on right now. Hey, the government's got to do something with the taxpayer money, right? They got to waste it somehow. But I really think that that's what this is more than anything. And Dan Henderson, actually, their first matchup when they fought in Pride, Henderson beat Belfort via decision. At Belfort, that was the first fight where he tested positive for elevated levels of testosterone. So Henderson, back in the day, granted, this was 2006, this was over 9 years ago now, but Henderson beat him when he was on the gimmick. So I'd like to believe that now that now that Belfort is off the gimmick, because I'm sure he was on the gimmick again, just didn't get caught. We all saw TRT Vitor take on Dan Henderson. That was a completely different Vitor. Now that he's off that gimmick, this is going to be the same Vitor Belfort that fought Chris Weidman, that had some gas for one round. But Henderson, I think he's going to be able to take it to him. And I think Vitor just ducking the Helwani show, the MMA hour. He's just doing that for the UFC's sake, more so than his PR.
Yeah, and I'm the more stuff, especially recently, that's just been so transparently fucked up with the UFC, from them withholding drug results to the transparently terrible Reebok deal. It just makes you wonder, the trajectory we're in, which is, since I've followed the sport, the most negative trajectory I've ever seen the sport on, with, all this terrible shit going on. if the sport and the UFC is able to rebound, I mean, this would if I'm, someone who wants to start a fight organization that wants to overtake the UFC, this is your fucking moment. This is your time to capitalize on the UFC abusing fighters. The Reebok deal, and if you're able to just out of nowhere generate enough capital to bring all the good MMA fighters to your promotion, then this is your fucking chance. I mean, if I had $1 trillion, I would invest heavily in MMA just to take the right. I mean, think about how much sports leagues make, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, the NHL. We're talking trillions. And all of them pay their athletes. They give them between 40 and 50% of the pie, while it's estimated UFC athletes get somewhere between 10 and 20%. So I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if you're a billionaire, you're looking for a few $1 billion to invest, let me handle that money, and I'll try and work some things out. I'll get old Chael, I'll get FRB, I'll get Ramses, I'll get the Jew Ross Finkelstein, and I'll make up a little fight league. Let's keep on trucking ahead here. Nick Diaz. We've talked about Nick on and off the last month. Probably the biggest story of the last month or two was the ridiculous 5-year suspension, essentially a lifetime ban, handed down by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. And just one day ago, Diaz puts on his Instagram, quote, "Just spoke with my legal team at Campbell and Williams, and talks with the Nevada Athletic Commission are going well. We're working hard with them to get this right. Thanks for the support." And rumors are Nick might be back to fight as soon as next year. And look, I was a little critical about the White House petition because I was saying, what the fuck is the White House going to do? But I'm not saying all this fan support hasn't helped. In fact, I think the contrary. If it wasn't for this giant push by fans to get Nick out of this, I don't think Nick would be out of this. I think they would just sit on their decision, and I think Nick's career would have been fucked. But fans have come out in full force, getting 100,000 people to sign this petition, getting a bunch of well-known public figures behind them, getting fans to flood the phone lines at the NSAC. And I think this is usually when I hear things about MMA fans, I'm kind of not that proud to be an MMA fan. You associate MMA fans a lot with drunken neckbeards and affliction shirts who are trying to get in fights, outside of bars and stuff. When this story, I'm proud to be a fucking MMA fan, because we all came out, and whether you tweeted about it, whether you called the NSAC, whether you signed the White House petition, or whether you just supported the sport by listening to bullshit MMA podcasts like the one you're listening to right now. I just think it's awesome how we came out in full force, and old Nicky D will be back by 2016, it sounds like.
Yeah, and hopefully when they get some sort of legal review going on, as it sounds like the process is in motion, they can get this bullshit overturned, and the NSAC can tuck their tail between their legs, and Nick Diaz can get back to doing what he does best and hopefully put on a good fight, because his last couple fights have been quite lacking. I mean, the Diaz fight the Anderson Silva fight, that was just a clown show between those two. That wasn't even really a fight. I don't know why they're why Anderson Silva got so juiced for that one. But even his GSP fight, everybody said he's going to get smashed. He can't stop the takedown. And after the third round, or I want to say actually in the third round, Nick Diaz completely shut down GSP's takedowns. GSP couldn't take him down anymore. But he never opened up with the striking. He never put that 1-2 together. He never put that constant pressure like he used to do before on GSP. So I was really questioning Diaz in his last couple fights as to where he was at. I mean, he had the Condit fight before that where Condit was just running from him. But again, when he had GSP where he wanted to be, he couldn't let go. He couldn't pull the trigger. And in the Anderson Silva fight, I mean, I suppose I should be commending him for his efforts in that one because Anderson Silva was juiced to the gills, apparently. And he did much better just even going to the distance with Anderson Silva in a 25-minute fight than a lot of people can ever say. So, I don't know. Hopefully he gets back and has the right frame of mind to get back into fighting and puts on a great performance in there.
Yeah, and we will see his brother fighting Michael Johnson soon. And, Nick, he's not a spring chicken. He's not, the guy in his mid-20s like he used to be. So I want to see this guy fight as much as he can before he ends up hanging up the gloves. Because really, he's maybe the most intriguing fighter in the sport. Just the attitude he brings is so unique. And it's genuine, and he seems like a cool fucking dude. Our boy Spider Silva on Twitter at Spider Silva 99. Chris bumped into him in Vegas when all of us were in Vegas at 189, and apparently Nick was super nice, and he seems like a nice dude, but he goes into fights with just this almost weird aggression, and he hates the person he's fighting, and he says it's got to be like that, and he's really friendly at times, and he's very caustic at times. And you've got to say that the Diaz brothers, not talking, in the terms of saying funny shit like Connor or Chael or anything like that, but it's just as far as being an intriguing figure. The Diaz brothers are probably at the top of my list of the entire sport. Moving on, Brian Caraway apparently wants to fight John Lineker in January. Talks about turning down a Faber fight, saying basically his excuse for not taking a Faber fight is here. I had the quote up here. Let's see. They kept pushing me, and they're like, "This is the date. We need you to do this right now." I told them I can't do it. I have a family reunion that's happening around this time. He also said something I'm looking for. Yeah. They're like, "We need to know," and I was like, "I can't tell you that far out. I just fought, and I'm trying to chill out and figure out what I'm going to do." The UFC offers him Uriah Faber. The UFC offers him a fight that can make his career. The UFC offers him, Faber is arguably, even with the top guys in the division being Dillashaw, Barao, and Cruz, you could argue that Faber is the most marketable guy in the division. He's been around since the WEC days when he was the champ and steamrolled everyone at 45. A fight against him elevates you a ton. A win against him, a win against a guy who, aside from Frankie Edgar, has never lost in a title or never lost in a non-title fight. It makes your fucking career, and you're not gonna take a fight against him because, quote, "I'm trying to chill out and figure out what I'm going to do." You're offered a career-making fight, and you're trying to chill out and figure out what you're going to do. I'll tell you what, you can figure out what you're going to do. Take the fight against fucking Uriah Faber. Yeah, you have a family reunion. I don't know. See if Aunt Tom and Uncle Bill will push it ahead a week for you, because this is this. I don't know. I was. Brian Caraway is somebody who I've had probably more harsh words for than any other fighter. You know, I try not to say negative things about fighters because I'm not a fighter. I'm just a fucking pussy. And these guys go out and bleed not for the fans. I fucking hate when folks go, oh, they're doing this for the fans. Like, no, these fighters aren't fucking doing this for the fans. They're doing it to get a paycheck, and because this is what they love to do. Don't get it wrong. They would gladly fight in an empty arena if it meant they still got a check. So I try not to call out fighters. I've always had words for Caraway, because I thought that quote he had years ago about knocking Ronda Rousey's teeth down her throat, just, you know, as someone who's seen, you know, violence, luckily not in my family or anything, don't get that twisted, but, you know, I've seen in clubs guys shove girls, and it's just so fucking sickening. And just saying that you're gonna knock a girl's teeth down her throat really sort of turned me off to him and made me think that he's not that swell a dude. And of course, the obvious being that what male on planet Earth isn't a little bit jealous of Brian Caraway and his also MMA fighter girlfriend Misha Tate. So yeah, I mean, Caraway might be a good dude who was just misquoted, and I don't know. He's maybe not a giant cocksucker, but I'll try and make it as least personal as possible. But this excuse, it's just man, it seems a lot more to me like he turned down Faber. Apparently, I don't know if he was offered Sterling, but he doesn't want to fight the undefeated Aljamain Sterling, friend of the show. He's been on twice. He wants to fight a flyweight, and John Lineker, really, a guy who's ranked 13th when, like, you're 5th and Faber's like 3rd and Sterling's 7th. You're gonna fight number 15 in January. All right, man. All right. I don't know. I just not a fan of the move, Pat.
Yeah, no, Caraway is irritating, Jake. I think that's where you're going with this one, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with that. At least just based on everything you hear, it's one of those things. If 50 people say this guy's a douchebag, odds are probably a douchebag. There was the quote about wanting to punch Ronda Rousey's teeth down her throat. And if I'm not mistaken, there was also something that had come out about Caraway punching Kat Zingano in the head at the weigh-ins. Something along those lines.
I remember that. I think he threw a bow at her or something.
Yeah, so we're not talking about just verbal assault towards women, but actually assaulting women and then taking down fights with other male mixed martial artists who have the possibility of beating him. And this whole, I've got a family reunion coming up, blah, blah, blah. You're trying to get on that one fight a year game, especially with the Reebok deal. Like, good luck with the pay scale he's on. He wins fights, but he doesn't, like, I don't even recall the last time I saw him finish anybody. Maybe every now and then he'll get a choke in, but typically speaking, he fights boring as fuck. How are you making any money? Just riding the coattails of Misha Tate, which I'll tell you what, Jake. Not jealous. I'm not really into her. Again, don't want to bash her, but I think the whole Rousey Tate thing just really got twisted with the media and everything like that. And I think Misha Tate is just super fake and not my cup of tea as far as my type. If we're talking about that, not my type. So definitely not jealous with that. And it seems like he's just kind of content to ride the coattails and be Mr. Tate and just kind of coast off of the fact that she gets a bigger paycheck than he does because she is more relevant in her division and to the sport overall than he is to his division and to the sport.
Yeah, and I'm actually looking now. The Zingano thing, I hadn't thought of it for a while. It was over 2 years ago. But apparently this is the take from Zingano's nutritionist Josh Ford. Quote, there's like 2 rows of chairs lined up and then a table where everyone's filling out their medicals. Kat and I are sitting in the front row, and a couple guys from Gabe Gonzaga's camp are on the other side of us. We're talking, and I'm looking straight at Kat when I see this body coming down the row behind her. I didn't notice it was Caraway, but there's plenty of room to walk by. As he gets closer to our chairs, he flares his elbow out and pops Kat right in the back of the head. The first thing on my mind was, that guy just elbowed her in the head. As I'm turning around to see who it was, Kat says the same thing. I turn my head to look, and it's Caraway. And then one of the other fighters, must have been Uriah Hall, sitting there, says, "Hey, I think that guy just elbowed you in the head." I don't know what the deal was. Caraway and Tate were both being real weird in the back. They're basically inseparable. Wow, that's, yeah. So it was a big deal. Kat, being who she is, gets up and starts pacing back and forth. At first, my coaching instincts kick in, and I want to go over to say something to him, but we're backstage. It's the UFC. I wasn't going to go try and make a big scene. I just thought it was crazy that he would take a shot at her, going back in the Wayback Machine for the Caraway Elbows Zingano story. But, yeah, that guy's a giant cocksucker. Let's
Fuck
move
that
on.
fool.
let's move on to Paige Van Zant, now going to fight another Coloradoan, not Kat Zingano though, Rose Namajunas. Thug Rose is taking the spot of Joanne Calderwood. JoJo having to pull out of the fight for undisclosed reasons, but now former women's strawweight title challenger Thug Rose Namajunas has stepped up on short notice to fight Paige in the main event of UFC Fight Night 81 that Thursday night, 2 nights before UFC 194 Aldo McGregor. Van Zant's teammate and coach Justin Buchholz, I don't know if it's Buchholz or Buchholz, confirmed the news on Tuesday night's Stud Show Radio, which is that podcast. I think we played a clip from Faber talking about Dillashaw a couple weeks ago. But yeah, Paige is 3-0 in the UFC. She got a late TKO win against Kaylin Curran. Then she got a decision win over Felice Herrig, and most recently a sub over Astro Girl, which, once again, apologies for clowning you on your nickname. Before I found out you were an actual astronomy major or like an astronaut or something. Like, apparently Alex Chambers' Astro Girl nickname is legit, and before the fight I was clowning her a little bit. "Oh, I'm Astro Girl," just saying some not nice things, but then I found out that it was a legit nickname, so I do apologize to the Aussie, even though chances are she doesn't fucking listen to this podcast because it's not a big podcast at all. But back to the topic at hand. Paige Van Zant now going to fight Thug Rose. I think this is a much tougher matchup for Paige. I think JoJo was sort of looking like she was slipping a late, where Thug Rose, man, she beat a lot of really good competition in that Tough House. I think Paige, this is her first big test, and if she can get through it, great. I don't know if she does, though. I'm picking Thug Rose in a close 29-28 decision. What are you thinking for Namajunas versus Van Zant?
Well, I happen to agree with your initial impression that I think Nami Yunus versus Van Zant is, or Nami Yunus is a more difficult opponent for Van Zant in this fight. Joanne Calderwood, I definitely agree that it seemed like her stock was kind of slipping there, viewed mostly as a striker, a little more one-dimensional, and certainly not the feared striker that she kind of once had that reputation of. Now compared to Joanna, of course, everybody's striking just looks like dog shit these days, but she certainly didn't have that shine that she had going into the Tough House, one of the most highly ranked. Of course, she's still well regarded, Joanne Calderwood, but um, I just believe that for Paige Van Zandt, um, I'm sorry, this young lady, she's just Nami Yunus. She's just got the striking. She's got a more intricate ground game as well. I think she has some explosive submission attempts that she goes for that she's well known for that she could potentially put on Paige Van Zandt versus Calderwood. She's mostly just known for her clinch game and her clinch striking, and really that's about it. Not really even known for her striking at distance or really anything aside from that. At least that's the way I view her game. And so I think Nami Yunus, she just brings a little more diversity. She does have some striking that she can throw in there, and she does have some grappling chops. So she's, at least in my estimation as well, a little more well-rounded of a test for Paige Van Zandt, and certainly capable of derailing that hype train. Now that it's getting closer to the fight, I mean, I do think Paige Van Zandt does look like a pretty polished prospect, and there has been times where we have seen Rose Namajunas falter. So, as far as putting any kind of specific bet on this fight, I actually feel like I would probably go with Paige Van Zandt. It's tough for me to call, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if Namajunas was able to put some big girl strikes on her, or maybe get her in some sort of submission or something like that. But I think Paige, on the other side of the coin, definitely has what it takes to shut Nami Yunus down. She looks like she does have a well-rounded skill set about her as well.
Word. Yeah, it'll be a main event there. I believe that takes place December 10th. So tune in. It'll be a fun card. You got Paige and Sage. That'll probably get better ratings than UFC 194. Let's briskly move forward. Chael Sonnen getting called a scumbag by lots of MMA fans because he trademarks the term that Conor coined at a recent press event, saying when you get booked in a fight against me, it's going to be a red panty night. Your wife's going to put on the red panties and you're going to celebrate because you're fighting Conor and Conor sells tickets and you're going to make a lot of money. Which it's a hilarious line. Apparently Chael, who's now in the market of selling shirts at badguyinc.com, apparently he was in talks with Conor's management, and then last minute Conor's management pulls out and Chael goes ahead and trademarks the term red panty night. I don't know what the legality of this is, if you can just trademark something that somebody else said. Like, I'm not sure how that works exactly, but I guess I can't really blame Chael if he had the intention to go in with Conor's people and Conor's people backed out at the last minute. Seems kind of strange. Did you hear about all of this red panty night? I mean, fans, it seems like the average MMA fan fucking hates Chael Sonnen. I looked at some threads on Reddit and everyone's like, "Oh, he's just trying to stay relevant. He's a piece of shit." Just like, wow, look how fast people turn on someone they used to love. Jesus Christ. I fucking love Chael. I thought he was really funny, and back when he was still active, and I think he's a decent fella. just the vitriol from fans toward Chael is kind of surprise. I don't know if it's that surprising, because you do have a chunk of fans who, if you talk shit, are just gonna hate you. But more haters than I thought he would have. Did you think this was a sort of scummy move by Sonnen to trademark Red Panty Night?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how can you go and steal somebody else's catchphrase like that? That's like patent squatting or something to that effect, and just taking somebody else's invention. Like you had mentioned, he was in talks with Connor's management, allegedly. If that were the case and the talks fell through, I would believe that the power would lie in the side of Connor's camp and Connor's management, because he is the person that, I mean, we went over the quote or the clip, and he's the one that came up with that phrase itself. So, how would Chael Sonnen have any way to leverage any kind of negotiations whatsoever, except for if he were making some sort of bid or some sort of business proposal?
Ooh, Pat, I think you may have cut out there. Let's see if the Skype.
Oh no,
there he is.
where are we at?
He's back.
No, yes, a thousand pardons there, technical difficulties. But yeah, for Chael Sonnen to go ahead and phrase and patent it behind the back of Conor McGregor, and I mean, I would only imagine that he could just put in a bid for something like, say, hey, you know what? I think this is a real good phrase. Why don't you let my T-shirt company make the shirts, and we can split the product X ways. And you know what? Perhaps his management said, no, you know what? We're all right. We don't want to go for that deal. And he goes, and I mean, and I'm just purely speculating. Who knows how it went down? But if he went and then just said, okay, well, you're not going to do this with me, I'll just go and patent it, or trademark it or whatever before you can. That's just BS, and I could only imagine that they could file to get that back, and with enough evidence, which I'm sure they would have. They've got the proof. All those statements are recorded. There's all the interviews, and I'm sure it'd be fairly easy to look at, and for Connor and his team to get that trademark.
Yeah, and I'm curious if this is the last we'll hear about it, because I do too question, how can you just take a guy's line, and there's a difference between taking a guy's line and repeating it at a media event and taking a guy's line and legally trademarking it. So I don't know, do you think we ever see Chael fight an MMA match again?
No, I don't think so. I think he's quite comfortable. He's landed some cushy gigs for himself. He's on ESPN now.
Yeah.
He's
on
doing
ESPN,
his thing. I
he's
mean,
in Global Force Wrestling. He's doing roles as a commentator. He's done Metamoris. He's
got a podcast.
He has a podcast. He's selling shirts. He's been pretty active.
Yeah,
He had a fucking kid.
Yeah, he's on that hustle. He's grinding. So, God bless him. I've got no ill will towards him, but yeah, that's I certainly hope that's not how things are going, and maybe there's more to this story. But yeah, you can't just go swooping trademarks like that, and I mean that is theft and tantamount to stealing an invention that's not yours. That's fucked up.
UFC 200. I think we see Chael versus Vanderlei. I think it's both guys' final fight.
Oh,
I
man.
just feel like there's a lot of money in that fight. Maybe you put it at like as like the headline of the UFC Fight Night event that you have on the Friday night before or the Sunday night after UFC 200. But I just have a feeling that there's enough money in Chael versus Vanderlei that it'll get made somehow, some way. Both guys I think are staying in shape, and they won't be able to be on the gimmick, but I just think there is enough interest that fight could drum up and enough money to be made that it'll happen. Our boy Kevin Black, I don't know if he's listening live, but he tweeted the show a little while ago saying knows. He sent us a tweet in all emojis. So none of this is actually written out, but I'm just reading out the emojis he sent. He sent nose snowflake, nose snowflake, nose snowflake, nose snowflake, German flag, nose snowflake, nose snowflake, nose snowflake, British flag, jerk off hand liquid, jerk off hand liquid, jerk off hand liquid swimmer, German flag, nose snowflake, nose. So we hope our boy Kevin Black over at Technics88, one of the frequent listeners of the show, Scottish Fedor, the dude for real looks like a Scottish version of the Russian legend Fedor Emelianenko. Who is he still planning to fight that bum at Sakigabara on New Year's? He's like fighting a guy with like one win or something.
Yeah, I think I had heard something about that abortion of a fight still taking place.
Jaideep Singh.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
Jaideep.
Oh. No, apparently, yeah. I thought I heard something according to MMA MMA Mania, an article posted just 16 hours ago. There was a report that Fedor Emelianenko needs a new opponent because Jaideep Singh is out of shape.
He said he a bitch.
Yeah.
He don't want it. He don't want it with Fedor.
Yeah, but there appears to be no shortage of heavyweight challengers. I'm sure if you're a heavy who's not in the UFC, you're getting in line to take that big fight against Fedor. Whether you're going to get smashed or not, it's going to be a red panty night, as Connor would say. Let's keep it moving. Ryan Bader responding to Rumble Johnson. Rumble calling out Bader a few times on social media the last week. Bader finally getting back to him. Quote, I've been out of the country on vacation with friends and family and off social media this past week. Saw all of the Anthony Rumble talk when I got back. We lobbied to fight him this past May and are still not opposed to fighting him. So first and foremost, we're not running from anyone and never have. I respect the guy and what he's done. He's had his shot. Now it's my turn to, at the very least, see what happens with this title picture. My mind's on Cormier, and that is what I've been told I've earned. We will see what direction we go pretty soon. Does Bader have a shot, have a non-zero chance? Does he have a chance in hell to get a title shot before John Jones does on his return? Because I say he has a 0% chance. Unless if you want your next fight to be a title fight, you're gonna have to wait till Jones DC. Because I'm saying that as far as who will DC fight next, Jones or Bader, barring injury, I say 100% Jones, not 99.9. I say 100% John Jones will get the next title fight. And if they make Bader, Cormier, and Jones Rumble as a title eliminator, I'll be absolutely shocked.
Yeah, I think that's 100% how they're going to play it. John Jones is going to fight Daniel Cormier unless one of them gets severely injured and can't come back for a long time. Then at that point, Ryan Bader would step in. But I would like to see them do DC versus Jones, the rematch, and then also set up Ryan Bader versus Anthony Johnson. Ryan Bader, I think we touched on it a little bit on our Friday podcast. I mean, Bader's confidence really seems to be sky high right now. So setting up him with Anthony Johnson, if he's in the right frame of mind, we have seen, again, what someone like DC did to him. Again, DC did have to survive a monster shot from Anthony Johnson in the first round and almost got finished there. But ultimately, DC, he was able to wrestle him and grind him out and get the submission in, I believe it was the second round there. And I think Ryan Bader definitely has a similar skill set, and he's got a similar level of cardio and conditioning. And it seems now he's really fighting more intelligently and really trying to put everything together. He's got a good base, and he's got solid heavy hands, and he's got a great wrestling credentials for the 205-pound division. So I think he has what it takes against Anthony Johnson. And if he wants to get a title shot, and if he wants to be a champion, he's going to have to be fighting guys like Anthony Johnson. So it wouldn't mean anything to win the title and then lose it in your next fight, because you can only beat the one guy. So it's good. Hey, fight these guys now. If you can still get to that championship fight, God bless you, and hope he does the best.
Yeah, and that would be a fun fight. I think we broke down the hypothetical Bader Johnson fight last week, but that would be some fun stuff. Staying at 205, Rashad Evans apparently wants to fight Alex Gustafsson. I think Gus KOs Evans after seeing him fight against Bader. I don't know, man. I guess Evans is. I don't know. I guess he's going to keep pushing it until someone tells him to stop. Ironically, like White had to with Chuck Liddell. Yeah, I don't think this fight would make any sense. It would make sense in that the fight would sell tickets because they're both well-known guys, but as far as a stylistic match, I think Gus would finish Evans in the first round.
I wouldn't doubt that. I mean, Gus, in spite of the fact that, Rashad Evans, I want to say he's 2-3 in his last 5, and Gustafsson, he losses. I want to say he's actually 2-3 in his last 5, losing to John Jones, Anthony Johnson, Daniel Cormier. So they both have similar track records as of late. However, I just feel that Gustafsson, he's got the style, he's got the length, he's got the particular strikes I think he could implement against Rashad Evans. I don't think Evans is at the point where he could put it together the way he needs to against Gustafsson. It would be a very similar fight to the one that John Jones had with him, where it was essentially just target practice, and the only significant strike that Rashad Evans was able to land on John Jones in that fight was this sneaky head kick. I believe it was in the second round that Rashad was able to sneak in on John Jones, but there really wasn't a whole lot of threat there. John Jones just was able to pick him apart at will, and I think Gustafsson definitely would finish him. He would have his way with Evans, and I was trying to think myself of why Evans would want this fight and why he would call him out. And again, I guess it's just because he views them as in similar divisional rankings. I don't quite know. Maybe he sees something in that style matchup he thinks he can exploit. But yeah, I also have Gus winning very handily and by finish.
And, maybe the UFC makes that fight just because who you give Gus next is a giant question mark. You don't give him Bader because I think Bader has earned his right to either fight Rumble or the next champion. Do you make Gustafsson versus... I don't know. He's fought a lot of these people already. Shogun, Manawa, Pat Cummins. I don't know. Rashad Evans is only 6th now, so maybe you make the fight just because of a lack of opponent. OSP's last fight was a loss to Glover. So maybe Glover Gus. I don't know. That's a very tough one. Actually, Glover Gus, or the winner of Glover and Cummins, which is, I think, the co-main event, right? Yeah, it's the co-main event on that Belfort Hendo card. We'll be breaking down next week. So yeah, maybe Gus against the winner of Glover and Cummins instead. Moving on, a couple fights that were announced before we close it all out. The first one being which one is it here? Poirier versus Duffy, rescheduled for UFC 195. It was going to be the main event of that shallow Dublin card we broke down at the start of the show. Now apparently we're going to see it January 2nd in Vegas. Do you think it getting moved from Ireland to Vegas has an effect? I think it does, just because you don't have a home field advantage many places. I think Dublin is one of those places. And yeah, the Irish will still probably come out for Duffy. They're not going to be coming out near as loud as they do for Conor. And that Conor fight is in Vegas 2 weeks before. So most of your countrymen who are going to be traveling to Vegas in that time frame to see a fight will probably be coming for Conor's. So Poirier, I had Poirier. I had him winning it the first time around, and I have him winning it this second time around too. Duffy has subbed some okay opponents, but none of them were near the level Dustin's at. I'll just call him Dustin. Yeah, I'm taking Dustin to take the fight against Irish Joe Duffy at UFC 195.
Yo, sorry, having some technical difficulties over there.
No worry, we will edit it out in post.
No, yeah, I completely agree with Poirier Duffy. I think this is probably for the best for Duffy the way this is working out. It might have been a little too much too soon with him getting the main event there in Dublin, in the hometown. Poirier, he's been looking real good at 155. He was a perennial top contender at 145 pounds there. And him being slotted a little bit lower, not in front of his home country, I think this will be a good shot. If he does win, it's the toughest test of his career in his UFC career, and that'll help give him some confidence moving forward there. And if he doesn't win, hey, it's not in front of your hometown, so I think it's really a beneficial situation for him overall, getting that rescheduled to 195. And as far as the fight itself goes, I mean, he does look like he has some good promise, but I'm actually probably rolling with Poirier in this one, just for how well he's looked as of late at 155. He's really impressed me with his two TKO wins there.
And on the same card, we're going to see a welterweight fight between Neil Magny, who just came off a pretty long winning streak there. He won, I think, 6 in a row, 7 in a row, 7 in a row before losing to Damian Maia. But he quickly got back in the win column just a couple months ago against Eric Silva, winning a decision against the Brazilian, taking on Stephen Thompson. Thompson, who just beat Jake Ellenberger at that tough finale we had the day after UFC 189 that actually Pat and I took in at the Hooters bar in Las Vegas, eating some chicken wings there.
Oh yeah,
saw him just brutalize Ellenberger. He's actually now on a 5-fight winning streak. He hasn't lost since that Matt Brown loss years ago. So he's looking to keep it rolling. Winner of this fight probably gets bumped up in the top 10. I'm not sure what both of them are ranked right now. All right, Thompson 8, Magny 12. So, I mean, shit, if Thompson wins, this maybe puts him top 5, top 6, and then you're talking about matching him up with a very top guy like a Rory or a Woodley. Thompson, this is, if Thompson can get the win, this is your last stop before we're talking about major welterweight opponents there. Let's see if we have odds posted for that yet. UFC 195. We don't quite yet, but yeah, I'm interested to see where they make the odds. I bet Thompson's maybe a slight favorite because Thompson has looked like an absolute beast of late. In Magny, although he hasn't looked like a slouch himself, his fight against Lim, I think, maybe exposed a couple weaknesses in that striking defense. Lim looked like he was close to finishing Magny before Magny threw the fight in reverse and pulled out a victory from the jaws of defeat there. I don't think Thompson lets him do that, and I think Thompson, just with that incredible striking, is able to defeat a guy I like a lot from Denver, Neil Magny.
Yeah, this is a really interesting matchup, and like you said, both these guys are right there on the verge of being at the peak of the 170-pound weight class here, and Wonderboy Thompson, with his active streak right now of 5, this is a real tough test, especially just in the sense that Neil Magny, he's very tall. He's one of the larger 170-pounders, probably the largest in the division. And that's going to be something he's going to battle a lot as he keeps to move up in the ranks at 170 pounds. Are these guys that are probably going to have a larger stature and a bigger build about them than he does. And so far, though, he's shown, especially he's got that knockout of Robert Whittaker. When we see what Whittaker's been doing as of late, he's got that in his back pocket. My goodness, he's just showing the accuracy and the precision of his strikes in his game, and he's going to need that against a lot of these bigger opponents. And if he can employ his game and come out with a W against Neil Magny, I mean, my goodness, that's going to say a lot. I mean, as you mentioned, Neil Magny, he's 7-1 in his last 8, and that only one was a loss to Damian Maia, who, I mean, Damian Maia, he's going to do to Neil Magny he's going to do to anybody pretty much what he did to Neil Magny, but especially with Maia's grappling expertise. And this was a situation where I think Magny was just too large for this fight. With a jiu-jitsu expert like Damian Maia, he was just able to work those limbs, and it was a textbook performance for him. So that was a bad style matchup. But Neil Magny has taken on all comers, and this is going to be a good test for him as well in Wonderboy, and seeing how he does with a really high level striker of the order that Wonderboy is. As you mentioned in his fight with Young Wai Lim, he did take some big shots there, and definitely looked like he was on roller skates for a minute. So we'll get a chance to see similarly if Magny sharpened his game up, and if he's going to be able to build some more momentum like he was able to on his last winning streak.
Yeah, that'll be a fun fight. UFC 195 is shaping up, along with the one that comes before it, 194, to be 2 stacked pay-per-views. And I think that about does it. What else? No other news unless you have any. Nothing really to discuss, but a good article Bloody Elbows Paul Gift wrote a couple days ago about a lawsuit lifting the veil. This is the title of it. Lawsuit lifts a veil on World Series of Fighting internal issues, alleges financial problems, NAC violations, goes in depth about some of the shady stuff going on with the World Series of Fighting and some of their employees. It was worth a read. Go check that out. We will be back next week to break down we will break down UFC Fight Night 77, but the thing I was trying to say was Bellator 145. We have a few pretty interesting fights. Bobby Lashley versus James Thompson, Michael Chandler versus David Rickles, Emmanuel Sanchez, Justin Lawrence, Will Brooks, and Marcin Held, Pitbull, Freire versus Daniel Strauss. This is going to be one of the better Bellator cards of the year on Friday. coming from the Scott Trade Center. So we'll break that card down. Be watching it next Friday. As of course, we'll be breaking down the aforementioned Henderson Belfort card coming from Brazil Saturday night. That also features a fight between Glover Teixeira and Patrick Cummins. We appreciate the shit out of all of you. I could go on for days doing shout outs, and I usually do that, but like I said last week, you know who you are. All of our followers, co-hosts, callers, if you fuck with the MMA podcast, we love the shit out of you. That's what we're trying to say. Pat, you have any shout outs before we get it going? Big shout out again to Ramses. We hope you're feeling better. Follow our boy Pat on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones.
Well, thank you, brother, man. And I just want to echo your sentiments, and I want to shout out to all the listeners, followers, subscribers out there, everybody who fucks with you boys. I'm at Sweet Pappy Jones on all the social media. Follow our boy Ramses. Big shout out to Ramses. God bless the kid. He's at The Aunt Jimmy Show on Twitter. Go shout him out. Go check out all the homies. You see who we fuck with. And you know what? You fuck with us, we'll fuck with you. And it's a beautiful thing.
It is a very beautiful thing. We'll be back. We're trying to maybe peg down Wednesday nights for the time being. Wednesday nights.
As far
as nailing a time down, good fucking luck with that. But yeah, let's tentatively meet back here next Wednesday. We'll post it up on iTunes late Wednesday night, Thursday morning. So if you're not listening live, we'll meet back here next Thursday as this episode is posted up this Thursday. We love the shit out of you, and we'll catch you next week. Till then, we go!
Tune into the MMA Podcast every Tuesday night.
God,
The wild style, always been a foul child.
Realize, sucker, I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA Podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in a wheelchair, the Aunt Jimmy Show has been on a roll. I wanna say John Jones is a host, so I think that I'll pick up the phone and dial 213-457-3380. We got hot takes on the stove. You get blood on your clothes if you're sitting in the front row. I throw on my gi and then I lace the hoops. I'll have Gal lying down cause he ain't the truth. And if Alan wasn't a cop, I'd mention you. And shout out to Ross Finkelstein the Jew. Cause according to you, you're an MMA guru. I'll prove Bisping lost his hands, Count Dooku. If you're a fancy boy, you get a 2-minute slot. Mystery wants a title shot. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. When you know that I'll never tap. So listen to the MMA Podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. And you know that I won't tap. Mystery, cocksucker. The MMA Podcast. Most of us just live and breathe this fighting shit like a doctor. Shout out to Jake. Shout out to Jake.